Hey, what's up everybody? We are going to be doing some cage work today. This is what you guys have been asking for. So I'm going to show you what I'm going to be doing. I know on the last video, we kind of briefly went over it. The next step is pouring the concrete walls. And what I do is I use deck boards, finished edge deck boards as my forms. I already have the levels at which I'm pouring the concrete to already marked. And it gives a good wood grain texture to the concrete. These little edges, they wear off a little bit and it looks a little nicer as it wears. And as it cures, it won't be so bright like it is right now. And I mean, if you look at the older section, you can see the algae growing on it. And this is the shaded side of my enclosures. The front side's a lot cleaner. All right, we just got a little concrete that I made thicker for the bottom of the forms. And then I'm gonna tamp it down. Then after that's all packed down, making sure there's no air underneath it or whatnot, I can mix all the rest of the concrete thinner. Okay, we finished pouring all these sections of wall. Should be a wall section, a door threshold. I have no idea if you guys can see that or it's too dark in there. They're all to those level lines. You see the arrow pointing at the line. So it's right where it needs to be. And I ended up with a little extra concrete in the bucket. So instead of just wasting it and pour it in the corner of my property, I've already dug one of the first enclosures all the way down to the level floor. And that's what I'll do is I will dig the dirt down the 6 inches, 7 inches, and then pour my two inches of concrete to it. So this waste concrete, I'm just gonna pour next to that. And eventually, after I pour the next section of wall, I'll dig this whole 10-foot, which is 2 enclosures, 2 5x12s. I'll dig it all out perfectly level, put the drainage screen in the middle, 3 layers of 1/2 by 1/2 inch galvanized mesh in the middle, the dividing wall up and everything, and then I will pour my concrete floors for both of these enclosures. And then all this dirt will be in the next enclosure over, and then I will move all this dirt back in. So that'll be the next step. Let me get that concrete in the corner and we'll be on to the next. All right, so I cleaned up my mess from the concrete, and while that's drying, I'm gonna take my time and work on another project. We have the 2 1.5, 2-year-old black throats. I believe that's the female up on the screen right now. The male is probably in the hide box. But this isn't my typical black throat monitor enclosure. I don't know if you can see next door, they usually have the concrete hide that's elevated in their enclosure. These were set up for the black roughnecks, and we used to have the tube that ran inside of that hill on the back side of the cage. So what we're gonna do is we have both animals in here, and while the other cage is empty, I am going to remove the hide box, all the branches, build the proper shelving in there, pour the slab, their hide box and everything. I'll move both animals in there, and then we'll finish this enclosure. So right now, all right, I'm all hot and sweaty. It's all dug out and pretty leveled. Next step is to put the form, and then I'm gonna load the form with dirt, meaning I don't need an 8-inch solid concrete slab. It'll be 8 inches thick around the perimeter for about 2 or 3 inches, and then it's gonna have a mound of dirt in the middle. So the slab is only 2 inches, 3 inches thick on top. Otherwise, it'd be a ton of concrete. We'll get started on that shortly. Meanwhile, I'm trying to work on this, and Pinky, getting big as can be, is watching me. What are you doing, Pinky? Let me see how big your belly is. Oh, the camera's not really showing it. So she's definitely in egg production. She should be laying eggs pretty soon. And she is huge. All right, we're back. I took a short lunch break. I came back out here. I leveled this a little better. I didn't like how this is my level line. I know I have 6 inches. I have one more board below that. So I have 6 inches of dirt over my concrete slab of this enclosure. And then I'm putting 8 inches or what, 7.5 inches of a slab, elevating it even more. So if you look at what is level outside, if we get a really hard rain, inside of this enclosure, the hide box, the heat mat, everything is going to be above the rainwater. The lizards are going to be high and dry. So this is what I was talking about, loading the slab, filling a bulk of it back with dirt, compacting it pretty good, and leaving 2-3 inches around the perimeter for the concrete to pour, and just not wasting as much concrete. It's not necessary. Nothing's driving on it. It is just for a hide box. That's it. And this area right here, if there is going to be a female in the enclosure, this is where I'll build her lay box, right next to that slab. And I would have to, well, I guess you'll see later when I build that, but I will actually dig all the way down to the concrete and put a board here, because I've had a problem with the females digging in their lay box all the way and trying to go underneath the slab. So I'll actually have to put a board there to prevent that from happening. Well, we finished pouring the slab and then this happened. So we'll see what it looks like tomorrow. Hey everybody. So the other day we poured the concrete over here, and then we did the slab in the young blackthroats enclosure. And no sooner did I finish pouring in the blackthroat enclosure, it started raining, and it really rained. We had 10 inches of rain in that night, that afternoon and that night. So I had to wait yesterday for everything to dry up enough to start working again. I cleaned all the, Pete's in the video here, cleaned up all the form boards and mounted them on the last section. Put the dirt there so the concrete doesn't pour out the bottom, and we should be ready to pour that today. And I'll bring you in the young blackthroat enclosure and show you how that slab turned out. All these animals are trying to get sun. There's Alejandro's black dragon, looking studly as can be. John's up on his shelf trying to get all the sun he can get. Lily. Let's see if Pinky's out. Oh, Pinky's out. Okay, so I had all the dirt piled up in this corner here, and I've already roughly moved it back. But there's the 8-inch slab we poured, and I think since they're not that big yet, they're like 3.5 feet, they're okay with this hide box for now. I'll build a more permanent one later, but I've got a lot to build. So I need to do the shelving in here later today. I use white pine since they're going to spend so much time on the shelf instead of pressure treated there. I don't like them sitting on pressure treated if they don't have to be. And I still need to build a door between these two enclosures. So I'll build the door, bait them in here with food without harassing them. And once I finish the shelf, I'll get them in here. And then we can do the slab in the next enclosure. All right, I finished pouring all the concrete on the last section of wall. It's all full to the fill line. The door thresholds are done. And over here, looks a little high on the fill line, but this concrete was a little thin up top, so it'll probably be a little lower than it appears. And the excess waste, I poured into the first enclosure that I already had skimmed down to where the bottom floor will be. So I just poured my waste there. I still need to excavate all this dirt. And one of the big things with those form boards, why I do one section at a time instead of doing all of my forms at once and getting a concrete truck over here to pour, is that I reuse those boards as the dividers. It would be a lot easier to build all my forms and then pour everything all at once and not mix all this concrete by hand. But then I would waste all those form boards. They'd all be cut to length and whatnot, and I couldn't use them for these 12-foot dividers. So this was the one way to do it with the least amount of waste, especially with lumber costs right now. I can't afford to waste all that lumber. But that's the last section. And the next step I need to do on the areas I've already poured is to put the 2x4 caps on them. Because right now this wall, even though it's sandwiched between those 4x4s, it's not attached to them. It'll be attached to the floor when the floor concrete's in. And so I put that 2x4 there, that 2x4 toenails into this 4x4, and then it's Tapconned into this wall, and it ties this wall in up top as well as the concrete on the bottom, and gives me a place to staple my screen. And oh, here's another good question, is people are going to ask, why do I build it this way with the 4x4 in the ground instead of just doing the concrete wall? This is going to rot, clearly, right? So the reason for it is to frame it up quickly with the 4x in the ground, like that 10-foot section right there. When I set these posts in the ground, I set that 10-footer in between those posts. It's going to be this, and I level it. All the spacing ends up square and right. I add all those gussets before I do the concrete that you see in the corners. It's just quick to frame up this way. And when this does rot, the fact that these 2x4s here are toe-nailed into that section of screen's not going to sink in. And it is so easy for me to get a multi-tool and form out that corner and just make it concrete later. It doesn't really matter. For what it is, it's rough carpentry. If something's a little out of square, repairing it's easy. And who knows, maybe I'll move in a couple years and I have to rebuild all this all over again. So we'll see what happens. But for now, I need to get these 2x4 caps on here and start digging out these enclosures so I can concrete the floor, put the dividers in, the divider over there to separate this enclosure. And I need to get four done sooner than later. Winter is just weeks away, and I would like to get some of those animals out of their rolling cages and into permanent cages. And I would like to get those 2 young black-throat monitors. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see them. It's so hard seeing through this screen. I don't think you will. But those 2 young guys, well, guy and girl, I'd like to get them separated. They are at an age where they're going through a really accelerated growth spurt, and he'll eat all of her food or vice versa. And they're just a little too food triggered for me. So I would prefer that they are not competing for food. They'd be much more relaxed if they weren't. So I'm gonna start cutting some wood, get those caps done. I don't think there's any time or any reason to time lapse that. It's pretty basic. I'll get that done, and maybe I'll show you digging out one of the enclosures, doing the concrete and drainage, and show how I do that next. Thanks for watching, everyone. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and ring the notification bell. See you soon.